Hi, I'm Lauren, and, and welcome to the first episode of my podcast series, Behind the White Coats. In this podcast series, I'll be raising awareness of good and bad treatment of people with disabilities under the NHS. Today I'm interviewing Leah Hale, who's a normal teenager and college student. The only difference, she has a visible disability. How does this affect her emotionally? What challenges does she face with her disability? Let's find out. So thank you for joining me today, Leah.
You're welcome.
So the first thing I want to ask you is, how does your disability affect you day to day? And what is your disability for people that don't know?
I have cerebral palsy, and the main way it affects me is it makes my walking a lot slower, and this affects me like day to day because I struggle to keep up with my friends as I'm walking because they walk a lot faster than me and they always don't slow down. That's great fun. So yeah, that's basically it.
Would you say that you've had like good or bad treatment when it comes to NHS treatment?
It definitely depends on the type of treatment. So, for example, I am supposed to have Botox in June, and they keep putting it off, and it's exhausting for someone like me because I know how much it could help my disability and how much it could help my walking, and it's like I just want to have it done so that it's over with and like I can actually be able to do a lot of things that I now can't do. For like example, like riding a bike, like that could help strengthen my legs to the point where I could actually be able to do that. So yeah.
Why do you reckon they're in like putting it off? Do you reckon it's money? Do you reckon it's like, what do you reckon the cause is?
I reckon, yeah, I do think it is a bit of money, and I also think it's, my doctors can't really be bothered. Like, I go to them about things, and they're like, oh, we'll sort it out at the next appointment. It's like, well, it's an issue now. Why can't you resolve the issue, like, right now? And I have to constantly go back and forth. Like, if I want a doctor's appointment out through the year and I don't have a GP, like a consultant's appointment, for example, you're constantly calling, being like, this is the issue. Like, I'm in a lot of pain with, like, my legs, for example. And they just, like, never get back to you. And it's like, when does it, stop?
Yeah, when does it end?
Yeah.
Would you say that it's a lack of like communication then, and people not getting the right information? Like you tell one person something, and then it doesn't get passed on, type thing.
Oh, 1,000,000,000%. So in February, I went to Newcastle for an appointment not to do with my disability, to do with another thing, and we were telling him all these things, this doctor, and he'd never seen me before, and he was going, oh, but that's on your notes, and it was something clearly very important, and it needed to be addressed, and he was going, I'll like contact your doctors about it, they'll send you a letter through the post. I don't think I have yet to receive that letter in the post, so
Would you say that it's a lack of, in terms of like your cerebral palsy and how slow things are, would you say it's a lack of education on people's parts?
Oh, definitely, 100%. Like, I'm constantly telling people, look, for me it's not a visible disability, and it's exhausting, especially like in public places, being like, I need to sit at the front of a bus, and I am too nervous to go and explain to someone, look, I need to sit on one of these seats because I physically cannot get up the stairs on the bus because it's exhausting for my legs. It may only be 2 steps, but and I don't want them to go, well, you don't look disabled. So I just keep my mouth shut and just like go to the back of the bus, and I shouldn't have to do that kind of stuff.
You said that you don't want people to say things to you, and you don't want the judgment. Have you ever had anyone say anything like that to you?
Not directly to me, but it's been like people will, it's like those types of people you can tell they're talking about you, like just by the way they're whispering to their friends, and the eye contact they give you, it's never been directly said to me, but I like hear people say things and they're like, oh my god, hurry up when I'm walking upstairs, for example, and I don't have the heart and I'm not strong enough, like emotionally, to turn around and be like, I have a disability, you know, don't be rude kind of thing. Like, it's going to take me a few more minutes to get up the stairs than it is you, but I will get there, and then you can get to where you're going. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All is good.
You said in one of your previous answers a minute ago that your disability isn't counted as a physical disability. Has anyone ever told you what they count as a physical, like a medical professional? They ever sat down to you and said a physical disability counts as this, this, and this?
Well, I would say it is a physical disability because it does affect me physically. However, it's not, for me, it's not as obvious, and that's why I refer to it as a, you know, invisible disability, because someone looking at me, and people have told me this before, if they look at me, they wouldn't go, that girl's disabled. Like, it's not as visibly obvious, and that does make it harder, because then I have to explain to people, and it's the whole thing of, like, what if they don't, you know, what if they suddenly judge me, and it's like, I can't do anything about that. Like, I can't, do you know what I mean? They're just going to judge me now.
Have you ever explained this to someone and have them, like, react like that?
No. I think I've had people silently judge me and, you know, have, like, really patronising replies, and it's just like, yeah, and I'm like, why? Like, you why have a opinion on something that you've never been through, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How would you say that treatment of people with physical disabilities and invisible disabilities could be improved under the NHS? Because there is a lot of, like, stigmatism behind, like, disabilities and how to deal with them and stuff. And, like, me personally, I feel like, I don't know, there's definitely a lot of stereotyping that goes on, I feel like.
Yeah, I think people, and doctors especially, need to listen to the individual in, you know, with the disability, because I've had incidences where I've gone to the doctors and they've just straight up looked at my mum, spoken to my mum as if I'm not all there, and I don't have a voice, and when actually my mum doesn't know, like, the full extent to what I go through day to day, because she, you know, she doesn't go through it, she's not me. And I've said to a few of my doctors, and even my mum's saying it now because I'm obviously older now, she said to me, like, well, you know, like, she said to my doctor, she was like, talk to Leah. Like, I don't know what's going on, Leah does. Like, and they're always a bit taken back by that, because they're like, whoa, like, someone's actually, you know, standing up for the person with the disability. And all of my doctors' faces are like, oh my god, like, there's this, like, woman.
Why do you think they're shocked by that? Do you think it's just because they don't think that disabled people can speak for themselves?
100%. Like, I've had many incidences where my mum's obviously said something and they've just given her a kind of like, oh, like, what? Like, she actually, like, the person next to you actually has something to say? And it's like, well, yeah, I'm a person, like, I have feelings, I have opinions. I'm not just my disability. Like, my disability doesn't define who I am. Like, and yeah.
Would you say that it's got better over time, though, or would you say it's got worse?
I think as you get older, it gets better. When I was younger, it was a lot worse, and they used to just, like, look to my mum for things. And even now, like, some doctors still do it, and I'm like, hi, like, I'm a person. You know, my mum has no idea what's going on in my life pretty much anymore. Like, I don't really talk to her much about that side of things. Like, my disability is very something I cope with by myself. So, yeah, it has gotten better, but I think for younger children with disabilities, it can be a bit, like, they can suddenly start to think, well, maybe I don't actually have a voice. Maybe what I have to say to my doctors and the problems I have don't really matter, when obviously they clearly do if they're bothering you. So,
Would you say that it would be good for doctors and nurses and people to have like refresher courses then on how to deal with like physical disabilities, like your disability, for example? Because I do feel like even though they go to medical school and they learn all this when they first graduate and they sort of learn it on the job as they go, I do feel like with all the information that they have to learn, they do sometimes like forget things as well, and that can sometimes make like situations worse when you don't know how to handle it, type thing.
100%. I do think refresher courses should be a mandatory thing, because just because you have a qualification, you're a doctor, doesn't mean you know everything. I've had a lot of doctors make a lot of mistakes in, my 17 years is like going to the doctors constantly. And I do think it should be a mandatory thing, because it's not worth putting someone's life at risk, or diagnosing them with the wrong thing. Because I see a lot of people on TikTok, for example, who have like chronic disabilities or physical disabilities, and they get diagnosed with the wrong one, which means wrong medications they get put on, and that can be really damaging to them. And although it's never personally happened to me, I do think it's literally 2023. Why is this still happening? You should have the knowledge and the training to be able to not make those mistakes again.
Would you say you're a pretty good judge of character in terms of if you saw a doctor and you thought, yeah, they're not going to sort of listen to me, would you sort of feel uncomfortable speaking to them?
100%. I've had many, many, many doctors, especially because I don't like change. If my consultant rings up and is like, oh, I'm sick, you'll have a different doctor for your appointment kind of thing, I go to my mum, I go, I'm not speaking to this doctor, I probably won't like him. And she's like, yeah, that's fine, I'll speak to him. But I get in the room and I'm like, okay, like, I kind of want to take over sort of thing. But there are definitely certain doctors, for example, my main consultant, I've never liked the guy. I don't know why, he's old. I don't get along with old people. And so I just like, for him, I kind of let my mum take over, and then if I have something important to say, I'm like, okay, I want to speak now. My mum doesn't actually know this part of like the story. So, yeah.
Do you think that the fact you're uncomfortable to speak to like new doctors you haven't had before comes from the fact that when you were younger they didn't really listen to you?
Yes, because there's always, even now, when they are listening to me and they are, letting me talk to them, it's kind of, will they actually see that these things about my disability are bothering me? Because I've had incidences where I've spoken about things and they've just brushed it off. And, like, I used to go home and, like, cry about some of these things. And it was like, I thought they were never going to get fixed because my doctors just weren't listening to me. So, yeah.
So, overall, do you think that the treatment of people with your disability is good or bad?
It depends on the severity. I mean, as you know, people with cerebral palsy, there's, like, different severities, different types. And I definitely think I am seen more as an individual and, all of that jazz to my doctors than some of my friends with disabilities. And I just sit there and they tell me horror stories and I'm like, oh my god, like, if someone spoke to me in the the patronising way that you've just been spoken to, I'd literally get up and walk out. Like, why? I just don't understand why we're not getting seen as humans. Like, we literally have the same emotions, the same, capabilities to love like you do. Why are we not? It gets exhausting.
Well, thank you, Leah. This has been very insightful.
You're very welcome.